The following is a sports exclusive on WHUS Stores, Connecticut. Hello again and welcome to the WHUS Sports Page. I'm your host, Harold Darak, and each week I'll be bringing you a complete coverage of all UConn sports and a pregame matchup before today's big game between the University of Connecticut Huskies and the Rams of the University of Rhode Island. The game is starting at 1:25, and bringing you all the action is Mike Brunitsky and Steve Tefft. Today's table of contents includes a Bruce Rosard interview with UConn hoop playmaker Bobby Dulin, a Tony Savino interview with the women's basketball coach Wanda Flora, Andy Young with double duty. First, an interview with the UConn hockey coaches John Chapman and Mike Grainsky, and then an exclusive Sports Page interview with Islander general manager Bill Torrey. Bruce Rosard follows with the Ram preview, and Steve Tefft has the UConn Husky preview. We'll be back with page 1 of the WHUS Sports Page right after this.
For good rock and roll to keep you going through the early morning hours, you can find it on the Rock Before Dawn show, Tuesday mornings from 3 to 6. My name is Don Best, and I'll get you through those pre-dawn hours with some fine British and American rock, including some classic tunes from the 1960s. So if you're awake, Sam, right here at WHUS, the Sound Alternative.
The Big East. The name alone is suggestive of power, strength, big time, and champions. The University of Connecticut basketball team, coming off a superb 21-8 season as New England ECAC champion, has taken the giant step forward to a place of prominence and prestige as a member of this newest and most formidable conference. Husky fans can look forward to such consistent opponents as Syracuse, St. John's, Georgetown, and Seton Hall, as well as continuing rivalries with Boston College and Providence, all Big East members. Contests with Rhode Island, Fairfield, Massachusetts, Boston University, and Holy Cross will continue to sustain the feverish pitch at which the state of Connecticut revolves around UConn basketball. Here is Bruce Rosard in an interview with UConn guard Bobby Dulin on how he views the upcoming season.
Okay, the first question I'd like to ask you, Bobby, is what you think the difference will be without the starters from last year. You're missing Randy Levine and Jeff Carr, and also on the bench you're going to miss Ferran. Is that going to make a big difference for your team this year?
I think the big difference will be missing Jeffrey Carr because he sacrificed so much up front playing defense, always playing the best defensive player. Then you have like an offensive player like Jimmy Abramitis taking his spot. So I don't know really what would be better right now, having a defensive player missing or a good offensive player coming in. But also, Abru made first team All New England as a junior, so he does have a lot of talent, and I'm sure we could have used him last year. And Randy was just he was a great overall player. And a team captain was always pushing us and during practice and really giving us a hard time, especially when we were down and no one didn't want to practice. He always got out there and he made us run harder. And Jimmy Ferran, he really never had the chance to play, but I thought he had a lot of talent. And, we'll miss him coming off the bench because, like, against Syracuse last year, he came in and hit 3 shots in the first half just to get us going before we opened up the second half. And I thought that was a big lift going, playing against Syracuse because we were really down that game. We were playing pretty bad. You
think you missed Carl on defense a lot? Abro's not quite as good as Carl on defense, but offensively you should prove to be a plus there.
Yeah, well, Jeffrey just took up a lot of room, and Jeffrey never shot the ball.
Until the playoffs.
And then he came alive. But, we're going to miss those guys, but the players we have coming in is just going to fill their spots.
Yeah, well, Abro basically should be able to fill Carr's spot, and then you think Glenn Miller and Bruce Kaczynski could do the job? They're the 2 freshmen that we have a lot of high hopes for.
Well, Bruce Kaczynski is going to be a great ball player. He's really young right now, and he's just learning how to play the game. Like, he had a great preseason, and then practice so far it wasn't going so well for him, but then in the scrimmage the other night he came through again. I give him 2 years, and he'll definitely be an all-New England player. And Glenn's having his problems right now because he broke his finger. But when you see Glenn play, you can tell he's going to be a good ball player. And I really know what kind of spot Glenn's going to play, either shooting guard or point guard, but he does both well, but he doesn't do one of them really good, and just doesn't just show greatness in one of them. But give him a couple of years and he'll be good too.
Right. So for this year, all right. One thing you're talking about, probably miss Randy Levine's leadership on the court and practice. Is that one thing that you think you'll be fulfilling for the team this year? As I know you're a junior, and then Abro is really the only other starting senior. The rest of the guys are pretty much sophomores.
I see my role of like calming the guys down when they're taking a couple bad shots, because we do have the players that could come down and take a couple bad shots. Like Mike could come down and take a bad shot, but then he'll come down and take a good shot. But my thing is to bring the ball up and control the offense and set everything up, which I'm just learning how to do, because I was really never a point guard, and that's why I really didn't play at Penn State. Like in high school, I just played shooting guard, just brought it up, and they gave me the ball and I shot it. But I see by my size, like I got to play the role that Joey Welton played, but not really shooting as much. And as long as I shoot, the ball's got to go in.
Yeah, so this year you plan to be the point guard for the team?
Yeah.
And then most likely, is there a basic idea of what the starting line is going to be this year? Or is it pretty much going to be you a point guard? And we'll go ahead.
I can see the front court's already set, with Corny and Mike and Delagranes and Abro splitting time, because Abro's hurt right now, and Kaczynski being the fifth big guy. But at the guards, like, we have 5 good guards that can play. But the thing with me is, like, I can get the ball over half court, and that's why I'm going to play. No one yet has really shown that they can get the ball over half court. That's all right with me.
Well, last year, pretty much Randy was the point guard, kind of, and Clay Johnson also was the other starting guard. This year, it's more like you're going to be the starting point guard, and Clay Johnson's going to be the shooting guard.
Yeah, because I can't really see myself as a shooting guard unless the ball is going in the basket. Mm-hmm. But see, that's why I'll get all my time if I don't take any bad shots. That's why I was getting my time last year, because I was getting the ball over half court and I wasn't forcing any shots. That's what they emphasize about me. Don't take any bad shots. Take them when you get them, and that's all I'm going to do to play.
Yeah, and also last year, I think it looked like it seemed to be a problem with UConn's backcourt. The backcourt seemed to be a little on the slower side with Levine in there and Johnson. I know you're really quick. Is Miller? He seems to be a pretty quick guard.
Miller is quicker than Randy was.
Yeah.
But the thing with Randy was a big guard. So when we played a team with a big guard, Randy would guard the bigger guards. And right now our guard situation isn't that big. We're all, like I'm 5'10", and the rest of them are like 6'1", so that could be a problem, but we'll just have to run against them.
Mm.
The thing with our team is, like, the guards know that the guards are the weakness of the team, especially when you have an all New England front court. So the guards, that gives them more incentive just to break, give a lot harder in practice.
Yeah. All right. This year, UConn is going to be in the Big East Conference, which is a new conference this year. It includes teams like Georgetown and Syracuse, who are always in the top 20 in the nation. Hopefully UConn will be up there this year. What do you think about that?
Plus another team in that conference is St. John's.
St. John's, yeah.
So, right now, preseason, we're rated 4th in it. And that's, we're the best team in New England, and we go into this new league, and it's 4th. I think that they did it just for the recruiting and the money, and the schedule is just, like, so much better, I think staying in New England wasn't the greatest, because, like, going to Maine and places like Vermont and New Hampshire really didn't help us.
Right.
I think it'd be better just to go play against Georgetown and Syracuse and St. John's. Just like even though we're going to fly there, but we're going to bring in so much money, and the recruiting is going to be so much better. But the league overall is going to be great, and the NCAA I think is going to take 2 or 3 teams out of that just to go to the NCAAs, that's a big plus.
They're going to wait. That was another thing. Is the Big East the first place team gets a berth in the NCAA playoffs automatically?
I thought it was the first 2 teams, and then the third team, I think, going to the NIT. There's 3 teams in the top 20.
Right. As of now.
Yeah. Syracuse is 5, and then there's like Georgetown 12, and St. John's like 16 or something. That's unbelievable for one league.
Right. So this year you could actually have a much worse record than you had last year and be a much better team.
Yeah.
Do you expect the team to be better this year than you were last year?
Definitely be better, but our record won't show.
Your record won't show because you're playing tougher teams.
We could win. We could at least win 20 games again, but
yeah, that would be a pretty good effort.
That's a good goal for our team.
That's basically the goal that Coach Parno's set: 20 wins.
Yeah.
Okay, that's basically about it. Thank you very much, Bobby Dulin.
It was my pleasure.
WHUS will be covering 12 UConn women's basketball games beginning December 1st versus Yale. The Lady Huskies are coming off an 8-win, 13-loss season last year, but the team is returning 7 lettermen and a lot of new freshman prospects. Tony Savino talked to Coach Wanda Flora earlier this week, and this is what she had to say.
Coach Wanda Flora, how does the basketball team shape up this year?
Well, we're extremely young this year. I think each year that I've been here, we've kind of brought in a few new faces and haven't really changed what we're doing. We started out several years ago with men, and man defense, and we've increased our offensive potential greatly. And this year we have 9 freshmen on the squad, which is just a few more than we had hoped we'd have to have. But we had a really good recruiting year last year. In addition to that, I've got 6 stalwart people back from last year. We'll be, I think, in really good shape with experience with those 6 people. They're all people that were instrumental in our season last year. 3 of those are sophomores, so that indicates youth. I think that's our key, is if we can develop some consistency within the youth.
Well, you talk about the youth and experience. How do you feel the team will be able to compare with the other women's basketball teams?
Well, we've been competitive over the past couple years, but we haven't been able to win against our strong opponents. And I think this year's team has the ingredient to win. We've got the talent, much better than we've had in the past. And along with that, an extremely good feeling among the players on the court right now. And I think that's going to be key. I think we're going to be very competitive in New England.
Well, I think not many people around the campus know too much about the basketball team. What are some of the good players on the team?
Well, you have to start with our captain, Beth Vinson. She's been with us, this is her 4th year, and she's really an outstanding defensive player. It's been kind of interesting. A lot of people say, you know, she doesn't really have all the talent potential that a lot of our gals have, but she's an inspirational leader for us, and she's the kind of a player a coach can't keep off the floor. Because of that, she just gives us a spark out there, and she's an extremely talented defender. She works very hard. Offensively, we have returning our second leading scorer last year, Chris Gedney. She's a junior, excellent shooter. We're looking for Carrie Mansberg coming back off of a knee injury, and then starting at the guards right now probably be Linda Nardoni, who's a sophomore, saw a lot of playing time, has a great outside shot, and just an exceptional hard worker. And right now our other guard position is kind of up for grabs. We look for sophomore Susie Sturman, who's been out the first month of the season, has been ill, and is just now coming to us, so we aren't quite sure how soon she's going to be ready to play. She played with us the second semester last year. And then we have 2 freshmen that are really looking very, very strong at the ball handling position. One of whom is probably the best player to come out of the state of Connecticut last year. Her name is Kathy Beauchesne. She's from Plainfield High School over here in the eastern part of the state. And she's probably one of the best ball players we've ever seen here. And we look for her to come along this season to be a big help. The other is Beth Conrad, who's out of Worcester, Mass. And she's just a really fine passer, and her intensity is exceptional. A couple other freshmen to look for, I think, are Dale Garvin, who's out of New London High School and is playing some center for us, an excellent leaper, very quick, and is going to give us a different dimension in the middle than we've had in the past because of her speed and quickness. Also, 6-foot player from Massachusetts, Mary Ellen Langfield, is coming along very well for us right now. I think if you take that, I think there's about 9 players, and that's, if I had to go on the floor today, that's where we'd be.
Well, it sounds like you're going to have a good team this year. Now, of course, the boys basketball team, of course, has enjoyed a lot of success. How does this relate to your success, and how do you think people feel about the team? Does this take away from the publicity of the women's basketball team?
The publicity of women's basketball or of men's basketball is publicity for the University of Connecticut, and I don't think one team really loses anything by the other one gaining publicity, you know. And I think the fact that our men's team has been strong in the past, and that in New England people really key to the UCONN men's basketball, has to be an asset for us. I think we're our own entity, however. We have to establish an identity, and I think we can show in women's basketball the game is different. The fundamentals are the same, but the size is different, the speed is different, the strategies are the same, but the person coming to see a women's basketball game is going to see a different game than they're going to see from the men. And I think that's when people come and expect to see the same game, they're disappointed. But they come expecting to see women's basketball at a high level, they're going to see a good ball game. And it's very competitive. I think both can help each other.
How do you feel about the progress of women's basketball and women's sports in particular, and the future of women's sports?
Well, women's sports is the progress I'm really pleased about, just overall in this country. And I think the future, I think women's basketball's future is a very positive one. Throughout the country at various places, particularly in the South, but also places like UCLA, and the Pacific Coast too. Big Ten is putting a lot of time and energy into their women's basketball programs. These are places that are already starting to make some money. And, you know, maybe that's a little arbitrary and a little mercenary, but I think the future of women's basketball is going to be to have more interregional competition, to see more teams from outside of New England, and I think also that there is the potential for some revenue production. And that's important in an economy where we need some money.
Okay, Coach Flora, thanks a lot for spending some time with us, and good luck this year.
Thank you.
Hockey will be covered exclusively on WHUS beginning Wednesday, November 28th, when the Huskies take on New Haven in Stores. Andy Young will be switching his interest from soccer to hockey at that time, and this week he interviewed John Chapman and Mike Grainsky of the Husky team to get into the mood. Here he is now with his report.
The UCONN hockey team, after a number of seasons around the 500 mark, is being looked at with a little bit more optimism this year. One of the reasons is all the newcomers. Coach John Chapman, what is exactly the reason, the fact that there are so many freshmen coming into UCONN this year?
Well, we had a very good recruiting year, Andy. Out of, say, 30 people that we were dealing with, we probably got about 25 of them. And out of that group, we've got a strong contingent of outstanding freshmen who we think are going to help us a lot.
You've been the only varsity hockey coach at the University of Connecticut has ever had. Do you look at this season with a little bit more optimism than in the past yourself?
Well, I'm always optimistic up to a point. We've still got to put goals on the scoreboard, and we've got to rely heavily on this crop of freshmen. As yet, they haven't scored a varsity goal, and until they do, I'll remain a little pessimistic, but I'm sort of optimistic because they have looked good in practice, and they've looked good in this one scrimmage that we've had so far.
You don't have a big number of returnees, but those that are coming back appear to be high quality, I think. Of course, led by the co-captains, John Peters and Greg Hutchings.
Well, you can't say enough about Hutch. He's from Ridgefield, Connecticut, which is not known for its hockey team, and he came up here and started off slow, and he's really developed into a blue-chip defenseman. Not only a defensive defenseman, but also the guy can score, and of course he led our scorers last year. John Peters came to us from Hershey, Pennsylvania, which is noted for its hockey, and he and Hutch really are a solid defensive pair. Now, we're going to have to go with probably three or four freshmen to supplement them, but we think we'll be strong on defense. We think we'll be adequate in the goal, and with Rich Regi and Chris Keeley returning and Dave Kennedy at the left wing position, we think we're going to get some scoring this year that we lacked last year in some crucial games.
Probably the only man who has been here with UCONN hockey besides John Chapman for a period of more than 4 years is Mike Grainsky, the assistant coach. Mike first as a player and now as a coach. Mike, you were a goalie here at UCONN, and you are a little bit aware of the goalie situation this year. Chip Golash is a returnee, and there are 3 freshmen behind him. How does that situation size itself up to you this year?
Well, at this point, Andy, it seems that we're going to have to look to our returning goalie, at least to start the season going as in the number 1 spot. But the other 3 are so close to him that we really can't commit on Chip yet. As far as the other 3 are concerned, they're working so hard, and we've got more depth deposition than I think we've ever had here before.
Tell us about some of the freshmen up front. Someone's going to have to score some goals this year, and as we mentioned, Chris Keeley and Rich Regi, along with Dave Kennedy, are the only 3 forwards that really have any scoring experience at all.
Well, to start off with, Andy, we've got the number 1 recruit that we were interested in David LeQueer from Fitchburg, Mass. He's a junior hockey player. He's not from the high school ranks, and he's gotten from that junior league a little more experience and a little more toughness than some of the high school players may have gotten in his area of Massachusetts. Another forward that we're looking towards will be Doug Banker, who, in my estimation, in the recruiting process last year, may have been the best public high school player in the state. and he's big and strong, and he can shoot, and I think he's going to be a big factor for us.
Coach Chapman, let's get back to something that's been talked about before. That is the outdoor rink here at the University of Connecticut. Does that help you guys as far as intimidating other teams when they come in? It has been a known fact for years that a lot of the visiting teams do not like to play at the unenclosed ice rink here.
Well, we like to think that it helps us, Andy, and I've heard other coaches say that it's worth 2 goals for the UCONNs. However, you still got to put the puck in the cage, and if you don't do that, you're not going to be the winner. We find that most teams actually like our ice. It's good hard ice, and any hockey player likes to play on good hard ice. We do get a certain brand of fan out there that is very partial towards the Huskies, and I think that helps us and sort of intimidates the opponents. But we have a lot of fun out there. We are a close team, and we play together as a family, and I think the results this year are going to be on the plus side of the ledger.
4 years ago, UConn started off, I believe, 9-1, and there were a couple games there where you could not find a seat at the ice rink. It really looked like a soccer game. Does that type of fan support really help you guys out?
Definitely does. Definitely does.
What are you looking at in terms of goals this year for the team? There are, I believe, 24 games. Could you give me a number, or maybe anything in particular that you guys are looking to accomplish this year?
Well, usually you like to think that you're going to be over 500, but you can't be over 500 until you win your first game. So you want to win your first game, you want to be over 500, you want to make the playoffs, and then if you make the playoffs, you want to win the playoffs, and then there's a certain ladder that you climb, and each rung has more success than the previous one. We'd like to go right to the top.
Mike, how does this team stack up against all the other ones that you've been here? I believe this is the 6th or 7th you've been associated with.
As far as depth is concerned, Andy, I don't think there's any comparison, really. I think this year, based on, we could use only now the Holy Cross scrimmage of last week, we've got 4 lines that are capable of scoring. Our 4th line, in fact, scored 2 of the goals against Holy Cross. The depth is what I think in the long run might wear down our opponents. I think we may have as much depth or more than most of the teams on our schedule.
What about the University of New Haven, the team's first opponent? Would you consider them perhaps a natural rival, one of the bigger rivals UConn has?
Well, naturally it's growing that way. First of all, we play them twice in the season. We play them once here and once at New Haven. And the fact that they've got a couple of players that were actually on our campus 2 years ago playing for them, and the fact that a lot of the recruits that we go after actually end up going there because they can't get admitted here, Andy. So it's growing that way, and they're in state. And, well, we're looking forward to that game as a very crucial one.
And we're looking forward to it, too. That's Wednesday, November 28th, 7:25. Coaches Chapman and Grainsky, thanks very much. Good luck on the season.
Thank you, Andy.
Now for something different on the WHUS Sports Page, professional hockey. And Andy Young again with an interview with Bill Torrey, the New York Islanders general manager.
Bill Torrey, the general manager of the New York Islanders. And Bill, the team is off to a slow start this year, but not that surprising, particularly with the injuries to defensemen Dennis Potvin and Dave Lewis, and the 2 that you lost in the expansion draft.
Well, as you point out, we are playing with a lot of new faces and trying to work them into the lineup. And with the players that are out, we haven't had the same lineup for any one game yet this year, which is not a thing that will bring cohesiveness and smooth play. So we're struggling a little bit right now. And while on the short term it bothers you a little bit, maybe in the long run it'll be a blessing for us because it's giving us a chance to look at a lot of different players and really make a good assessment of what we really think we have.
The Islanders were once again picked as one of the preseason favorites to be a contender for the Stanley Cup. Any extra pressure on the team because of that?
Well, anytime you're assessed, a position like that, there is additional pressure. But then again, that's what professional, hockey at this level is all about anyway. It's pressure. It's everybody striving to be the best, and that's what the big reward is, really. So it's pressure, and yet it's something that you welcome.
Bill, you've built 2 expansion teams. First, of course, the Seals, and then the Islanders. Here in Hartford, we have the Whalers, and the Whalers come in, I suppose, with a little bit of an advantage, getting Mark Howe, getting Jordy Douglas, getting John Garrett to start with. Yet they are obviously a team that is a little bit lacking in manpower compared to some of the other teams here in the NHL. What suggestions would you have for Jack Kelly, who is trying to build the Whalers up from scratch?
Well, first of all, Jack is an experienced hockey man. I'm sure he has his own blueprint. I don't think there's any one formula which you can say will work every time. Each expansion has been a little different than the one before. I think the major thing you have to have is that you've got to have patience. There are going to be some players that are going to take a little bit longer to develop than others, and you cannot afford to not give those players a chance, whatever their timetable may be, if you're convinced that they have the basic ability to someday make it, and it's not always an easy thing to do.
The expansion draft itself might have hurt you a little bit, particularly in the defense department. Jerry Hart is now with Quebec, Pat Price is out in Edmonton, and of course with the retirement of Bert Marshall and the 2 injuries, the Islanders are a little bit short back there right now.
Well, we got David Langevin back from Edmonton, who was an original draft choice of ours, and he missed a lot of training camp through a knee problem, and he's playing with a brace on his knee, so he's not quite 100% yet, but we think that he's only 24, that he's going to come on and be a real strong addition. We have young Mike Cordy, who played for us in Fort Worth last year, who is beginning to learn about life in the National Hockey League, and so we do have a different defense, but we think that when we get all of our regulars back and we make the decision who our best 5 or 6 are, we think our defense will be every bit as good as it was last year.
What can you tell us about Anders Keller, the man who you added from Sweden, supposedly the best player over there last year? He has been a big addition. Yeah,
he was voted the most valuable player in Sweden last year. He's 26 years of age. He's had good experience on the national team, and he's a very exciting player. He's very quick, and yet he's strong. Most people don't think of Swedes being strong, forechecking type forwards, and yet while he's not a big player, he's very strong on his feet, and he's very good in the corners. If you notice, whether he's playing left wing or right wing, which is another plus because he is very versatile, he likes to get in there and dig the puck out and make the plays from the corner. So we like his speed, we like his aggressiveness, and we think with the retirement of Eddie Westphal, he's given us a versatile type forward that can take his place.
Very quickly, what do you think of the playoff system? There are 21 teams in the league, 16 get in. A lot of people don't like that.
Well, as long as the Islanders get in, I'll like it, but I have to admit that the balanced schedule and the playoff format that we have this year to accommodate the 4 new teams coming in, it wouldn't have been my preference, no. I think it's something we're going to have to revise in the future, and hopefully in the very near future. I think geographical rivalries are an important thing. They're important in all professional sport, and I think hockey has got to get to them, and the quicker we do, the better it's going to be for everybody.
To put it in simple terms, you would much rather see the New York Rangers 8 times a year than the same number of times as, say, Edmonton?
Yeah, I prefer it for my own fans' sake. I prefer it from the competitive standpoint, and I think that while at this point in time they may say that, well, if Edmonton, Winnipeg, and say those Western teams were in a division, that it wouldn't be as strong, but that's only looking at it today. Who's to say 5 years from now who's going to be the strongest? The important thing is that you're beginning to develop a rivalry that your fans are going to want to see and will develop. I remember when I was in Oakland, Oakland and Los Angeles, when expansion first came, weren't automatic rivals. But we met once in the quarterfinals of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and we sold out every game, and it was it created a lot of interest in hockey on the West Coast. So that's the kind of thing that's got to happen, and I think the sooner we get to it, the better off we're going to be.
Bill Torrey, thanks for spending the time with us. Good luck to you and the Islanders.
Thank you.
We'll be back with the URI and UCONN previews right after this.
Just 30 minutes a day. The time to watch a TV show. Time it takes to eat fries and a hamburger. The time it takes to drive around the neighborhood. If your children spent just 30 minutes a day in a regular program of physical education at school, they'd have a better chance of growing up strong and healthy. Well, how about the schools in your community? Find out. Write the President's Council on Physical Fitness and Sports, Washington, D.C., 20201. Your children have a right to good health. Exercise it.
In last year's game against the Rhode Island Rams, the Huskies put off their biggest upset of the season by trouncing a fine URI team 31-6 here in Storrs. This year, things will be much different when the Huskies travel to Kingston to battle the Rams. Last year, when these two Yankee Conference rivals met, Rhode was going for their 8th win of the season, but today, the Rams will be trying to avoid their 8th loss of what has been a disappointing season. Rhode Island's problems were summed up by Coach Robert Griffin when he noted that the Rams haven't been able to play a game all season in which both the offense and defense played up to par. Some games the offense has looked good and the defense was poor. Other games the defense was solid but the offense couldn't get things going. The result is a 1-7-1 record with their only victory coming against the lowly Black Bears from Maine. The Rams have suffered losses to Delaware, Northeastern, Holy Cross, Brown, UMass, Boston University, and New Hampshire. In last week's game against Kings Point, a game Rhode surely expected to win, they were lucky to escape with a 24-24 tie after holding an early 17-0 lead. The Rams' offense has been hurt all year by troubles at the quarterback position. Greg Meyer began the season as the signal caller, but he was benched after the Rams lost their first 4 games of the season. Freshman Doug Lewis was his replacement, and the Rams won their first and only game of the season under his direction. Unfortunately for the Rams, Lewis was injured the next week in a loss to Boston University. Meyer came in to replace him, and he was also injured in that game. This thrust freshman Terry Lynch into the starting lineup, and according to Coach Griffin, Lynch has turned out to be the Rams' most effective quarterback of the season, turning in good performances against UNH and Kings Point. For today's game, Lewis is healthy and ready to play, but Lynch will be the starting quarterback. Rhode's strong point on offense is their running game. Junior Leroy Shaw is the leading ground gainer with 605 yards on 166 carries for a 3.6-yard average. Shaw has been named to the All-East first team both as a freshman and a sophomore, and he now has gained over 2,000 yards in his collegiate career. He has outstanding speed and is also a good receiver and will be the primary concern of the Husky defense in today's game. The starting fullback will be John Rogers, who became a starter in the middle of the season and has thus far done a good job for the Rams, gaining 146 yards on 35 carries for a 3.8-yard average. The starting receivers today will be slot back Bob Holden, who poses the Rams' biggest breakaway threat. So far this season, Holden has caught 9 passes for 166 yards, which averages out to an impressive 18.4 yards per catch. Chai Davidson will be the starting wide receiver after spending most of the season at the fullback position. Senior Steve Kimilori is the tight end. He's caught 10 passes for 147 yards. UConn coach Walt Nadzak has a lot of respect for the Rams defense. He was especially impressed by the way the Rams played against Boston University in a game that the Rams lost 7-0. The Ram front four is very big and very good. Left tackle Bill Hutchinson is 6'6", 255 pounds, and he'll be keeping UConn's offensive line busy all day. Right tackle Paul McNulty is a 6'3", 244-pound senior who is starting for his 3rd consecutive season. The backbone of the line is 6'2", 225-pound nose guard Charlie Babbitt. Babbitt was All-Yankee Conference last year and is the Rams' best at getting to the quarterback. Rhode also has good linebacking cores led by 6'4" senior Ben Batone. Batone is considered one of the top linebackers in New England and is the strongest player on the Rams squad. He's been a starter ever since his freshman year and is the anchor of this tough Ram defense. The Rhode defense is vulnerable in their backfield, where they have been hurt because of inexperience and injuries. If UConn expects to score points against this team, Al Iverson will have to be able to take advantage of this one glaring weakness that Rhode seems to have on defense. Rhode is a team who has been down all year long, and they're coming off of a game last week, which Coach Griffin said put the capper on what has been a disappointing season. They have nothing to lose and will want to revenge last year's embarrassing loss to the Huskies. This is Terry Lynch's 3rd start at quarterback, and he's probably starting to feel comfortable with the rest of the offensive unit, and vice versa. This could be Rhode's week to put it all together, and it will depend on the play of the 2 quarterbacks. Will Lynch be able to get the offense moving, and will Arison be able to take advantage of the Rams' weak defensive backfield? These 2 questions are the keys in today's game at Meade Stadium in Kingston, Rhode Island. This is Bruce Rosard for the WHUS Sports Page, and now here's Steve Tefft with the UConn Husky Report.
In the wake of last week's disappointing 16-12 loss to Boston University, the Huskies face today's game with nothing to gain or lose as far as the Yankee Conference is concerned. Coach Walt Nadzak admits he doesn't have any idea how his players will react to today's game. Losing a game of the importance of the BU game usually doesn't facilitate a whole lot of team spirit. The senior members of the Huskies would understandably like to put in good performances in their final college football games, especially Ted Walton and Steve Beal, who have been followed around by pro scouts for some time. So the game does mean something for a few people. We might see some changes today, most notably in the Connecticut offense, which was all but non-existent last Saturday. There may be some experimenting in the backfield. Freshman Mike Walker might start his first varsity game at fullback, as regular fullback Joe Addison is starting to feel the aches and pains of the long season. Don't be surprised if the Huskies throw some new offensive formations at the Rams, sometimes deviating from their usual power I setup. Flanker Kenny Schweitzer will see limited action today, as his shoulder is still giving him a lot of problem. Nadzak said earlier in the week that he does not want to jeopardize Schweitzer's future by playing him too much with the bad shoulder. Other than Schweitzer and Addison, the Husky offense is in good shape to take on a tough Rhode Island defense today. Defensively, the Huskies don't appear to have too much to worry about. They're facing a Rhode offense that averages about 9 points a game, and that's even less than the UConn Huskies average. They would like to shut out the Rams effectively to atone for last week's subpar performance. There are no changes as far as starters for a defensive unit that has been pretty well set since the beginning of the year. A win today and again next week against Holy Cross will give the Huskies a 4-5-2 record, matching last year's win total. The Huskies want nothing more than a repeat of the dominance of last year's game with Rhode Island, which they won 31-6. A similar performance today would take some of the sting out of last week's defeat at the hands of the BU Terriers. And we'll be back with the conclusion of today's sports page right after this.
Here's a tip from the Internal Revenue Service.
Tax tips this time of year?
Sure. Suppose you're moving because of a new job, or maybe you've had a casualty loss. You'll want to know what expenses are deductible next year and what records you'll need when you do your tax return.
How do I get this help?
Easy. IRS has 90 free publications and a toll-free number in most areas. Or you can visit your local IRS office.
And I thought the IRS closed down after April 15th.
A message from the Internal Revenue Service.
Here are the Husky leaders after 9 weeks. In scoring, Bob Seeger has amassed 42 points on 10 field goals and 12 extra points. In rushing, Tony Jordan has 712 yards on 198 carries. Al Harrison leads in passing. He's 49 for 123 for 581 yards and 5 touchdowns. In pass receiving, Ken Miller has 15 receptions for a 15.3-yard average. In tackles, Matt Donovan leads with 72, 39 primary and 33 assists. In kickoff returns, Joe Addison has accumulated 290 yards on 14 tries for a 20.7-yard average. In punt returns, Joe Marcus has a 12.9-yard average. Teddy Walton leads in interceptions with 4, and Gary Brooks leads with 10 quarterback sacks. The University of Connecticut field hockey team is in Springfield right now playing in the EAIAW tournament. They have come in the tournament ranked number 1 on the basis of a 15-win, 3-loss season. They are ranked 4th in the nation, and the winner of the tournament gains a berth to the Nationals, which will be held at Princeton between November 28th and December 1st. Thank you for joining the last edition of the WHUS Sports Page for the football season. This is Harold Darak saying, see you in December. If you have any comments, good or bad, about the sports page, send to WHUS Sports Page, Box U-8, Storrs, Connecticut, 06268. So now stay tuned to your dial, 91.7 FM WHUS, for today's second half of the WHUS doubleheader between the UConn Huskies and the Rhode Island Rams. This show has been pre-recorded.